Night Callers Bigfoot Radio.
Hello and welcome to Night Callers Bigfoot Radio. I don't know the date. I think it's March 25th, 2018, and I think I'm here by myself. Lauren just texted me and told me that her laptop has died, so I guess she's going to be trying to call in. Anyway, I'm glad that everyone is here tonight. Nothing much new coming on, or going on, actually. So I think I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about our guest tonight. I found out about Zach Starrick. Someone referred me to his YouTube channel where he does radio interviews over on YouTube. And it was really a unique thing. He was telling us earlier how he does it, but it was really cool. And I watched several of his episodes, and I thought, I'd really like to bring him on. He was interviewing other Bigfooters, and come to find out he is a Bigfooter himself, so I'm sure he's got quite a few stories to tell us. But he is known by his friends as Blimp. He's 23 years old and a fifth-generation cattle farmer from rural Williamson County, Illinois. He is the head researcher and co-founder of Southern Illinois Monster Hunters, which is also the name of the YouTube channel, and his Facebook. And Zach has been interested in researching Sasquatch since he had his first encounter when he was 9 in Randolph County, Illinois. So, while we're waiting on Lauren to come back, I'm going to go ahead and bring Zach on. Zach, how are you doing this evening? And thank you for coming on.
Well, I greatly appreciate you guys taking time out of your day and your night to interview this old country boy. It's a great pleasure, and I'm honored to be on Night Callers. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And we're honored to have you, actually. Zach, can you just kind of tell us how you got interested in Bigfoot to begin with? Just kind of give us a little history there.
Well, it all started with my mom. My mom got me interested in the Hollywood monsters of Hollywood. Bela Lugosi, Lon Chaney Jr., Boris Karloff, Glenn Strange, all the Dracula, Wolfman, Frankenstein, the Gill Man, Invisible Man, the Mummy. It was all stuff that I've been brought up on, and I've been brought up on the ghost stories and the history of Williamson County. It's known as Bloody Williamson from all the gang wars and the clan wars and moonshiners that happened back during Prohibition and in the Great Depression. And, the county I live in alone is only about 25, 30 miles across, probably about the same as it is going north to south. And, it's just a squatchy county, and it's basically the epicenter for southern Illinois that I live in. And, it just started from there, and then whenever I was about 8 or 9 years old, I was in the elementary library of the school I went to as a kid. Crab Orchard Elementary School. I was looking through the library trying to find something that would pique my interest, and I picked up a book called Bigfoot, Man, Myth, or Monster by Carrie Carmichael, and it told me, and I read stories about prospectors being picked up by Bigfoot and took back to its lair, where he was held for about a week by a male Bigfoot, a female Bigfoot, and 2 younglings, and how his story of how he got away and got back to civilization. I've read about the encounter with the prospectors in Ape Canyon. There's so much. It all startled and spiraled from there, and up until the time I had my first encounter with a Bigfoot when I was 9 years old. And it started from there. I wanted to find out what it was that I had heard that night, and I just wanted to find out more. And it was an ever-growing puzzle because, like I tell everybody, it's an ever-growing puzzle. Once you think you've got the puzzle figured out, there's more pieces thrown into the mix.
I understand that. Well, can you tell us a little bit about your first encounter?
Yes, ma'am, I can. I was 9
Go
years
into
old.
as much detail as you possibly can, because our listeners love the details. Okay.
Like I said, I was 9 years old. I was still in elementary school, and it was on a weekend. I was in Randolph County, which is about 100 miles northwest of the county I live in. I was with my dad at the time for visitation, and he took me to a Cardinals game in St. Louis, a night game. And we was heading home that night down South Prairie Road outside of Redbud, Illinois, in Randolph County. And it was just every bit of wildlife in that area was stirred up. The coyotes were running across the road in and out of the bean and the cornfields. And I just said, boy, the coyotes are moving real bad tonight. He goes, yeah, that is strange. They usually don't around here. So we get in the garage. We had a walk-in garage that was built onto the house. We parked the truck outside, and we're going inside, and the coyotes outside the house in the cornfield that's exactly about 20, 30 yards behind the house just lit up and started howling and yipping and crying. I said, daggum, Dad, these coyotes are just going crazy tonight. He goes, yeah, I don't know why. They must be hunting or something. He put the key in the lock, and then about that time out of nowhere, we heard this bone-chilling, god-awful, blood-curdling scream. It sounded like a wolf howl turning into a woman's scream, and it tapered off, sounded like an elk bugle. Well, about that time, I was tearing the door off the hinges trying to get in. And I about broke the key off in the lock trying to get inside. And ever since then, I've been interested in the topic of Bigfoot. Whenever I heard that sound, I wanted to find out more. I wanted to know what made that sound, because not even my dad or my grandpa that was sitting there in the house that heard it didn't know what made that sound. And I didn't even find a comparison remotely close to that cry that I heard until about 10 years later. I was just flipping through YouTube, and I typed in Bigfoot, and there was this recording of a howl that was made that they posted on YouTube, and I played that howl, and I relived that time whenever I was 9 years old all over again. And I called my dad and my grandfather in the room, and I said, listen to this. And they listened to it, and I said, that's exactly what we heard that night 10 years ago. And they said, what is it under? And I said, it's under a Bigfoot call. And so I said, what do you think about it? And my dad said, well, Bigfoot ain't real. It was probably a sick coyote. And I said, Dad, I remember that sound. That was no coyote. And my dad never understood the topic of Bigfoot, being a researcher, and he still doesn't. And so I took it to my mother, and I played the same sound for her, and she said, I've got a story to tell you. And she told me about growing up hearing the same sound here in Williamson County, 100 miles southwest of where I had my first encounter. And it all started from there, just hearing the cry of a Bigfoot in the middle of the night as a 9-year-old.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clear.
Okay. Well, mine started out very similar, actually. I was fishing. I knew nothing about Bigfoot. I didn't even have an interest in it. I didn't believe in it at all. We were out fishing and we heard a roar. It was a howl that morphed into this roar, and I knew nothing that sounded anything like that. And I was absolutely terrified. I could not wait to get back to the boat ramp and get out of there. And I had the same reaction to it, even though I was an adult. And so it's funny how all these things begin, right? That's
I know.
amazing.
It seems like you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you're always unprepared whenever you do encounter these things.
Maybe you're in the right place at the right time. Just look at the direction that it took us both in.
Oh, yes.
So, okay. So I imagine that through your teenagehood and growing up that you still kept an interest, a moderate interest, but I know how being teenagers will get you kind of sidetracked. Were you like that, or did you stay on track and continue to have an interest? Because you're only 23 now, so.
I stayed right with it and everything. I mean, I was the outcast at my school, so I stayed in the books. I stayed on the internet researching and everything, and I researched like that for about I want to say 7 to 9 years. I stayed in the books and I built up a knowledge of these things. I started watching TV and everything, seeing how other researchers went about it. I read all the kinds of reports I could find, whether it was from BFRO or if it was from just local people around my area. And I started, whenever I started really doing my field research in 2012 and 2013, I started studying the habits of a Bigfoot and everything, and I still do that to this day. Whenever I go in the woods, I do everything I can to get a reaction out of them, whether it be tree knocking, to call blasting, to doing gifting and stuff like that, putting little trinkets in the woods like CDs. And especially I've got a reaction out of them by using children's toys, like little baby toys. I'd leave in the woods, and I'd sit out there making sure that if they was watching, that they'd know how to play with these toys. And sometimes I'd find the toys thrown about 50 yards. Sometimes they'd be turned upside down. Sometimes they'd be laying down on the ground next to the stump I sat them on. And it just depended on what kind of sounds these toys made. These little noise makers, it just depended on what kind of sounds they made to what a reaction I got out of them, whether it was thrown, sat down, or turned upside down.
And did you ever leave them food?
Yes, that's a good question. Yes, I have. When was it? Back in 2016, me and my team, there were 6 of us out here, and my main research area is out here on my 240-acre farm that I have with my grandfather. And I took about 6 of my team members out, my brother, and there was 5 others, and we went out to the woods out here behind my house about a quarter mile, half mile, and we took Golden Delicious apples that we got from Kroger and Walmart, and we scattered them all out throughout the woods. And I said, set them in stumps, set them on the ground, up in the forks of trees and knot holes in trees. And then I had a little bit of a thing where I was going to see how they reacted to having a harder way of getting food to them. I took about 6 or 7 of these apples, and I stuck them in a mesh fishing basket, just a regular metal fishing basket with a spring-loaded door on the top. And I took a rope, and I tied it around the top handle of that fishing basket, and I threw it up over a tree a couple times to make sure it'd stay, and I tied it off to that same tree. And I left it out there for about 2 or 3 weeks. I went back every 2 to 3 days and checked, and some apples would be gone, some would have been gnawed on by wildlife, and some of them just be gone whole, and the core would be laying there. and sometimes they'd eat them up all whole, but they never would touch that basket. So about week 3, I went back out there after one day of working on the farm. It was about dusk, and I went out there, and that same tree that I strung that lure up from was bent over and pinned underneath a log, and that basket was laying straight on the ground.
Wow.
But none of those apples inside of that basket was touched.
Why do you think that was? I'm curious as to what you speculated about that.
Well, the thing is, I see Bigfoot because you see how the reports of these creatures, how massive they are, that and some reports are saying of how slow they are, that they would be, it'd take a lot of energy to power that body, that massive frame of theirs, a lot of calories. And I believe that Bigfoot is an ambush hunter or a scavenger, and they'll take food the easiest way they can. So I guess that they saw that they didn't know how to open the basket, and the basket, all you had to do was reach in the top with that spring-loaded door and pull an apple out. I think they didn't realize how to open that up, so they got mad and they pinned that tree under, saying, like, you know, here's your basket back. We don't want it.
Either that or they may have thought that it was a trick. Because it was the food wasn't obvious, so they may have thought, well, there might be a camera inside there that will, like a game camera, set up inside the basket. As soon as they raise the lid, you know, they're going to get their picture took. And I don't know.
This was a complete see-through mesh basket.
Oh, I see.
You could fit your middle finger through the mesh on that basket and everything. It's the kind of old-timey basket you put your fish in, kind of like a makeshift live well.
Oh, I see.
So they could see where the apples were in there.
I remember you saying it was mesh, and I apologize, I didn't remember that. But that is odd. That is extremely odd. Okay, well, I'm going to kind of jump backwards a little bit. How did you get your team members? How did you go? How did you meet them, and how many are there, and how often do you have any over? Well, let's just start with how did you meet your team members?
Well, all the team members I got, we all went to school together. We're all either still in school at Crab Orchard High School, or they were a grade underneath me or a grade ahead of me, or they graduated with me. They found out close to the end of my senior year that I was starting to go public with my research in 2015 whenever I graduated, a couple months before I graduated. And they said, "Are you serious about this?" And I said, "Yes, I'm dead serious." And I told them, I said, "I've been at this longer than you think, and it's been a very strong interest of mine since I've been real little." And they shared the same common interest with me, and it started off with just 3 members. My cousin John, my best friend Gunner, they helped me found the team, and then there was my brother that had been with me since 2012 in the woods researching. And we went from there. It started off with the 4 of us, and then it grew and grew, and these other people that I went to school with, they went and they said, you know, I found some weird stuff in there in the woods, and I'd like to find out what it is. So I said, well, come on the team, and we can work from there. So it's grown. It started off with 8 original members, and we've grown up to about maybe 16 to 20 members.
Oh, wow.
Great.
That is phenomenal.
That is it is. It's impressive. I am just impressed. Okay, so do you handle reports?
Oh, yes. We not only go after Bigfoot, but we do cryptozoology and paranormal research, field investigations. We do paranormal investigations.
And I'll stay busy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I said, they call the county I live in Bloody Williamson for a reason. The first aerial bombing on U.S. soil happened 2 miles down the road from me.
Oh, wow.
Back in 1926, 1927, the Shelton gang dropped a homemade bomb from a biplane on the shady rest that Charlie Berger and the Berger gang used as a hideout, which it was a barbecue stand and a little a hotel on Old 13, and they dropped it, and it was a bottle of nitroglycerin in a Coke bottle with a cork in it with 5-6 sticks of dynamite wrapped around it, and they dropped 2 of them on the shady rest.
How about that?
And the thing, my great-grandmother, Opal, was right down the road from when it happened, and she said that explosion, because there was so much moonshine and so much ammunition there at the shady rest, that it lit up the night sky. They bombed it at about midnight, and she said it lit up the sky so bright you could have found a sewing needle laying out in your yard.
Oh, my gosh, that is crazy.
That is. That's history right there. Okay, so you're saying because there is such history in the area, there's also a high probability for the paranormal as well. Kind of like
undoubtedly. Undoubtedly, out here, it was a war zone back during Prohibition with state police cracking down on the bootleggers. There was the Ku Klux Klan that come through here, and they're still in this area. And there was Escalin Young that was head of the state police, and he was a revenuer, and he was head for the KKK chapter in this area. There's out here on Route 13, it's called L'Oreal Price Memorial Highway, because Charlie Berger bumped off L'Oreal Price, a state policeman that was patrolling this area, and it bumped him and his wife off, and they dumped L'Oreal Price out around Carterville between my house and Carbondale, a little town called Carterville, and they threw his wife in an old air shaft for a coal mine on Route 37, and they're all buried right there up the road in my hometown.
Oh. My goodness. So let me ask you, have you ever noticed, now there seems to be, I've heard several reports of this, in fact I've kind of witnessed it too, that many times in an area that's well, I'm just having a hard time finding my words tonight. Lauren has been doing the interviewing for the last 2 or 3 shows, and I guess I've gotten rusty. But what I'm asking
that there
is
a high concentration of paranormal activity, do you also notice a high concentration of Bigfoot activity?
There you go. Thank you, Lauren.
Yes, undoubtedly.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
There's been 2 times that I've been in the woods on a night investigation where I've heard my name spoke. I've heard whispering in the woods, far from any house. And I would hear my name said, like someone was standing right next to me, because there's an old schoolhouse that sits out here on our property where my grandfather went to school at, called White School. And I was up there a couple weeks ago, and the only thing that's up there now is the old coal slough, the chimney, the foundation, and the steps, and the old pump house. And there was back in the 20s, there was a couple of Sheltons that got caught in a gunfight with the Berger gang out here on my road, and they dumped them off out here on where our property is now today.
Wow.
So I wouldn't be surprised that usually where Bigfoot usually be, I mean, it takes a traumatic event for a haunting to really even start. It takes a traumatic event where the person that's being killed right out of the blue, they really don't understand, their soul doesn't understand what happened. They're trying to find an answer, in my theory. They're trying to find an answer before they cross over.
Well, I'm sure, and I'm sure that if a place is haunted, humans, most normal people, we are not normal, obviously, but most normal people tend to gravitate away from those places, and so obviously, a creature such as Bigfoot would want to hang out there if people didn't. So, there's also that.
No, I mean, I pick up on stuff like that very easily because I'm empathic, and my mother is too.
Mm-hmm.
We pick up on emotion, and we pick up on certain things that most normal people wouldn't pick up.
Right.
That's right.
I do know a lot about that. So if have you ever had a dual experience with the paranormal and Sasquatch?
Well, yeah, I said 2 times, but this one is one of the most recent encounters that I had. It was a year ago tonight. I was out in the woods because I map whenever certain things in the year happen, like whenever the robin comes back, whenever the Easter flowers start blooming, whenever the frogs start chirping again. I map it, and I use those as a pattern to usually map out whenever to start expecting a Bigfoot to start moving back in the area, because during the winter they migrate south, and they're because I found same reports and characteristics of Bigfoot in my area in the state south of me, down into Tennessee and Arkansas and Kentucky and Missouri. I go and I find similar characteristics of what the Bigfoot in my area are like. So I go and I usually expect one of the 4 clans to start coming back about this time of the year, whenever it starts warming up around Easter.
Yeah.
And for about 3 weeks this time last year, it was darn near every night. My mother and me would sit outside, and we would just hang out and talk. Whenever she'd get off work, I'd smoke my cigars, and she would go and just sit there and tell me about her day. Well, we would be hearing hoops and hollers and howls off in the woods where my research area is. I call it Sasquatch Hollow. And this went on for 3 weeks constantly. It was darn near every night. And one night I got the idea to go out there by myself. So I got my gear, I got my headlamp, I got my lantern, and I had a Bowie knife on my hip. And I usually don't go in the woods without a firearm, because out here you don't know what the wildlife department's turned loose. We got bobcats, mountain lions, coyotes, wolves, copperheads, cottonmouths, you name it, we pretty much got it out here that can kill you. So I usually carry a firearm with me for protection. Well, I didn't have a firearm with me that night, so I took my real big Bowie knife that I had with me, and I told Mom, I said, here's where I'm going. I'm going to park the truck, and I'm going to go in there on foot. And I said, if anything happens, I'll call you, come get me. And she said, okay. So I was cutting down the north to south stretch of Sasquatch Hollow, and I didn't hear nothing. I heard nothing significant. I'd hear a wood knock every now and then. I would hear a coyote howl. It was nothing out of the ordinary, really. Usually I would go, and I'm easily to dismiss some tree knocks because of squirrels still would be dropping old nuts from their burrows out of the trees, and they'd be clacking off the limb. So I get down to the south end. Nothing has happened yet. And I cross the creek. There's 2 creeks that come around the north to south end of the hollow, and they meet, and they head south. I crossed the south branch of it, and I went to the east to west stretch of the hollow. And I sat down on a log because I got back problems from a car wreck I had about 4 years ago, and I sat down to rest my back and my legs. And I'm sitting there talking to myself, and I'm making a mental note of what's going on, and I'm writing stuff down on my phone in my memo book on my phone, so that way I can add it to my journal. And I close my phone, and I start walking again after I put a lip full of tobacco in, and I start walking out, and I start hearing whispering in the woods, and it's real faint, and there's 2 hills on either side of me.
Was it like this, Zach? Was it like that?
Basically.
Okay.
It was like two women talking.
Hmm.
And it was real quiet, real faint, and I'm half deaf. I'm deaf in one ear, and I can hear plain out my right ear. And it was coming in on both sides. I could hear it in my right ear. And it sounded like two women talking, and I heard, Dula Mavechi Tita Dulu. And I'm sitting there shaking my head, and I'm saying, you're hearing voices. You ain't cracking up. Don't pay it no mind.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I started walking. I hadn't took 3 steps, and I heard a big tree come down about 50 yards behind me, just a big old hickory tree. And you know those things are big, how big they get.
Yeah.
That thing come down, and it was close enough I could feel the shock wave from it hitting the ground underneath my feet on the other side of a creek. I turned around, and it was full moon that night. I turned around, and I looked behind me, and I could hear something cannonball that creek, just like you would diving in a pool off a diving board. Cannonball that creek, and I could hear something sloshing coming up out of that water, and it was big. And I looked in the moonlight in the other clearing on the other side of the trees, and I could see the silhouette of a Bigfoot running up out of that creek and making headway straight for me.
Oh, towards you. Okay.
Oh, no.
And, I mean, he was within, I want to say, about maybe 100 feet of me. And it was maybe about 150 pushing it. He was that close to me, and he was hauling. So I turned tail, and I ran. I ran like the devil was after me. And like I tell everybody, you don't run from a Sasquatch just like you don't run from anything. Even if it's a 500-pound black bear, you can stare him down. You don't turn and run because they'll instigate the chase on them, and they're on, and they'll see you sprayed, and they'll pull you down, and they will kill you.
But you ran.
Well, I went against everything I said, and I ran. And I called my mom on the phone, and I said, get down here and get down here now. I'm down here in the draw. I got a Bigfoot on my ass, and he is pissed. Get down here and get me now. She said, I'm on my way. And I ran for about a quarter mile, and then out there on the edge of where this was at is right on our cattle pasture. We have a 5-strand barbed wire fence that sits about 5.5 foot off the ground. I high jumped that barbed wire fence and cleared it. Just dead sprint, bounded over, and I cleared that thing. I rolled over and down into the ditch, and right where the creek ran through, I went and I got in the culvert that was up underneath the road, a big old concrete culvert, and I got as far in as I could because it opened up on both sides, so I got dead in the middle, pulled my knife out, stuck it against my chest, and started shining a light at both ends because if one of these things was going to come in there after me, I wasn't going down without a fight.
Right.
Well, then I hear my mom coming down the hill, laying on the horn, and she stops right above where the culvert is. I come crawling out of the culvert and climbing up the bank, and I get the Jeep, and I said, get me the hell out of here.
How did she know to come get you? Did I miss
I called her and told her.
Okay. I missed that part. I'm sorry.
And she went down.
Chasing you.
Well, she went and right after I got in that culvert, you could hear it running up the creek after me, and you could all of a sudden hear it stop in the creek, and you could hear it heaving, heavy breathing. And
Our
I'm
experience
sure
is down here is that they bluff a lot. The Bigfoot bluff.
Oh, this wasn't no
tear
bluff.
down trees. I don't think it was. If it was still after you, even after you took off running, but generally down here, and I know we live in different areas, but whenever they charge, if you abandon your position and leave, they quit charging. And,
well, I mean, this thing, it followed me for a quarter mile on foot. It chased after me. You could hear it.
Been terrifying.
Oh, I was running. I honestly thought that night, and I tell everybody, I honestly thought I was going to die that night. I didn't go back in the woods for a month.
A month? I wouldn't have gone back for probably the rest of my life.
Well, there's a reason I went back. There's a reason I went back, and I'll tell it to you as soon as I get done.
Okay.
My mom picked me up, and we went down at the end of the road, and we turned around at the fork in the road, and we come back to the house. She dropped me off at my truck, and I'd parked about a half mile from where I would get run out of. I wasn't going to make it back to the truck because I had to run up a pretty steep hill to get back to it. And this thing was running me down in rough terrain. I wasn't about to run up a hill. That thing could have pulled me down going up a hill. And she dropped me off to my truck. I got in the truck, and I peeled out, and I passed her coming back to the house. And she come over, and she opened the door of my truck, told my brother to go inside. My mom was so scared, she ran out of the house with no shoes on. And my brother, he brought the rifle in case if something decided to charge the vehicle, he was going to put it down. And my brother was 15 at the time, and he doesn't scare easy. My brother was scared to death, and he wasn't even there. And Mom said, "What happened?" And I said, "I done something that pissed him off real bad." And she goes, "Well, what do you think it could have been?" I said, "I honestly don't know." So I went and I called a friend of mine, and they said what was going on, because here's the thing. The Cherokee, they come through my area on the Trail of Tears. Just about 30 miles south of here, down by Rosicler, is called the Trail of Tears Scenic Highway. And that's exactly where the Trail of Tears come right across our belt in southern Illinois. They said what happened was they was testing you. And this was just a theory because he mapped it from other Native American tribes that had gone and done a similar thing to test their young braves to see if they was worthy of manhood. And so he says, what you do, you go back there on the next full moon wearing the same stuff you was wearing that night, and whatever you do when they start to test you, you don't run. If you don't run and you make that whole walk the same way as you had it planned, without running, you'll earn their respect, and they won't bother you no more. I said, well, it's worth a shot. So I went back later the next month on the next full moon, and I had the same stuff I had on my tan shirt, my khaki pants, my boots, my hat, my lamp, my lantern, my black overcoat I was wearing that night. And I got to the north to south stretch, and I was panning along with my light along that creek bed that thing had rushed out of, and one of them peeked up over the creek bank and looked at me. And I was about maybe 20 foot from it. Well, I jumped, and all of a sudden I screamed, "Get out of here!" And that thing turned tail and ran up the hill. And it just stood right up in the creek bed, and it ducked down, went underneath the bank, and turned and went up the four-wheeler path that we have going up the hill. I walked all the way down, crossed the creek again. I started hearing the whispering, and then I heard another tree come down, and I turned around right as that tree come down. I heard one coming up out of the creek. And, of course, the water level had dropped, so if it cannonballed, I wouldn't have heard it. It come up out of the creek, and it stood there, and I looked right at it again, and I was thinking in my head, not this time, mister,
Oh.
And I stood there for about 2 minutes, and I didn't even touch my knife. I just put my hands out where he could see that I wasn't going to go for my weapon. He turned around and crawled up the bank up the other side of the creek and went back up the hill. And I walked up that steep incline back to the truck, and went home.
Man.
So how did you feel after that? I have to ask you. Were you elated? Were you relieved? What was your emotion?
Well, one, I was glad I survived this round. No, I mean, I felt a sense of accomplishment because I did exactly what this fella told me to, and I did exactly word for word what he told me to, and I went and I did it to the T. I felt accomplished. I felt like I'd earned their respect, and I passed the trial, as I call it, because at the time, the Bigfoot that was in my area was called I call him the Yahoo by the little bit of a scream they make. That's very distinct from every other scream I've heard. And it was the trial of the Yahoo, as I called it, and I passed it.
Do you use any equipment when you're out in the field, or do you just basically go out there with just yourself?
Up until recently, I really didn't. I mean, I didn't have the funds to really buy any kind of expensive equipment. Just recently, I bought another camcorder that I use. That if you've seen any of my latest field videos, I've shot with that camcorder. I've bought and invested in 2 digital recorders, an Olympus recorder that I use with me, and whenever I'm out, I'll have that recorder running the whole time. I'll leave it sitting on a stump or inside of a hollowed-out tree or on top of a down tree whenever I'm walking around, and I'll go walk around and leave that camera running for an hour at a time. And it seems though like they got like a sense to them. I'm not saying they're psychic or anything, but it seems like they got a sense to them, because every time I shut that recorder off, right the split second after I do, they start hollering again. And I'm one of these unconventional researchers. I go and I use animal calls whenever I'm in the woods. If you watch any of the live feeds I've done, I use a hoot owl call. And I use that to imitate whoops and howls. And sometimes I've heard that they mimic barred owls, and I'll do a barred owl hoot. And I've used crow calls, I've used coyote calls, I've used cottontail and distress calls. They all seem to have a certain reaction for every kind of call.
And I believe that could be because they're no mimickers.
Oh,
so
yes. And especially
it piques their interest.
Well, whenever you read this about a crow, the crow is basically the first one that sounds off, and it lets every animal in the area know that something is up.
Absolutely. Exactly.
And like I go and I pattern this with a lot of times that I've been camping out, I'll go and I usually listen to the animals, because usually if I listen for a barred owl to start hooting, and then I listen for the coyotes to start howling, that usually means with me that there's a squatch in the area, and usually 9 times out of 10 I'm right, because every time I hear those two in succession within an hour of each other, that usually means there's business is about to pick up.
I completely agree with you. I have said that myself, but I don't have any scientific reason why that is. But I know that I know you're right about that, because that's exactly what happens down here as well.
Well, what I've found in the research that I've done with people that study birds of prey like owls and eagles, they say that if there's danger in the woods, the owl is like the night crow, the version of the crow at night, the nocturnal version. They'll go and they sound off an alarm if something is in the area, and they'll start communicating back and forth with each other. And usually whenever you hear that first one, if it shuts up and it doesn't make another sound, then that means whatever they're alerting about is close by. And with the coyotes will start howling if they're trying to find each other, or if there's a kill made by them. Because I believe Sasquatch are scavengers as well as hunter-gatherers. That, say, coyotes make a kill on a deer, Bigfoot will come in there and run them off like a lion would a pack of hyenas, and they'll feast on the kill and let someone else do their own work.
Yeah.
What about the other way around? Like, I'm going to suggest this because it's been suggested before. You know, many people have recorded what sounds like a Bigfoot howl, and it's often followed by the cacophony of coyotes. They'll start soon after this Bigfoot howl. And some people have the theory that the Bigfoot make the kill, and then they call in the coyotes to finish up, get rid of the evidence, basically.
Well, here's the thing, though, where I post argument about that theory. I'm not disagreeing with you at all, but...
Oh, well, I know. I'm just saying this is a suggestion. That.
Oh, I agree with you wholeheartedly, but here's the way I see it, because I've seen this happen. I've had Bigfoot before kill my cattle before. I had 40 head.
I was going to ask that. That was one of my questions, actually. And
I have 40 head of cattle out here on my little cattle farm, and we usually lose about 1 to 2 cattle a year, sometimes 3. Usually they die of natural causes, but there's been a select few out of the few that we've lost in the last decade that have had their necks broken completely like a hangman's break.
Oh, my goodness.
1,500-pound feeder cows. There ain't nothing that big out here that's going to pull down a cow and break its neck, because we got the coyotes. Canine predators will run its prey down and attack the hind quarters so it doesn't run, and then it'll start pulling it apart and disemboweling it while it's still alive. A feline, like a bobcat or a mountain lion, will jump on the back of its prey and bite down on the windpipe or on the muzzle and suffocate it. They won't break a neck. All these cattle that I've lost, out of the select few that I've lost, they've been broke. They didn't have a mark on them.
I don't understand why they would kill it if they weren't going to eat it.
Easy food. I mean, we would go and sometimes we bury our cattle, and sometimes we'll go and we'll let them lay if they're down in the creek to where we can't pull them out with a tractor or the dozer. We'll just leave them alone. I'll go back every day if we leave them alone and check and see what all has been picking on them, because I can tell if it's buzzards or coyotes or possums pulling on the carcass. Sometimes I'll find a whole quarter of them missing, like a whole hind quarter missing. And that'll go on for about a week, and then the rest of the animals and scavengers will come in and take off with it. So sometimes I think a Sasquatch will kill its prey and leave it like a mountain lion would. They'll go and they'll kill it, drag it off somewhere, and leave it and eat it at their leisure.
Right. So are your Sasquatch pretty good size up there in Illinois? I mean, what is the average height and build, and is there a
well,
I am just one blank. I apologize.
They go and
is there a certain description that they always seem to be?
They differ.
Okay.
There's been reports of black Sasquatch, redhead Sasquatch, blonde-colored Sasquatch, brown-colored Sasquatch. It's basically, we got the whole rainbow of them up here, basically, to sum it up. There was a report made in 2015 down by Anna and Jonesboro of where a man seen a Sasquatch by his dog pen. and he said that thing was about 6.5 foot tall. But I've seen them out here where I've gauged them at 10 foot. And I've had one Sasquatch about a year ago walk in front of my truck on my way home from whenever I was coaching baseball last year. Walked right in front of my truck out on an old country road, and then the Sunday after Thanksgiving this last year, we had one that caused us to have a hit a deer and wreck our Jeep.
Oh my gosh!
And
so what happened
that's
there?
quite a lot of activity, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've got several reports of Sasquatch in such a small area. We have the Tuttle Bottoms monster around Doris Heights in Harrisburg, Illinois, just 15 miles down the road. We have the Big Muddy monster that's reported 30 miles from here in Murfreesboro. The Hamp Mine monster reported about 40 miles down the road in Hardin County and Pope County. We've had reports of Bigfoot in the Shawnee National Forest, out on the Crab Orchard Wildlife Refuge, up around Wren Lake and the Wren Lake Wildlife Refuge. There is so much ground out here, and not to mention from all the old coal mines and strip mines that are in my area. We have 5 mines within a 40-mile radius of my house that are out here. Some of them's closed down. Some of them are still running. That is plenty of place, and there's plenty of cover, food, water. Just out here in this little spot where I live, within 2.5-mile radius of my house, there is 10 farm ponds where they have fish, and they have snakes, and they have frogs. There's plenty of goats, and there's cattle out here. There's peacocks out here, chickens, hogs, plenty of dogs to be picked on. There's so much out here. There's a suitable food source for them. We got deer, turkey, squirrel, possum, coon, skunk, groundhog, mountain lion, bobcats, coyotes, and wolves. We've got the rainbow out here. If something wanted to stay hidden out here in my belt of southern Illinois, it can stay hidden and it won't be found.
Sounds like it. Sounds like, I mean, they have plenty to do there without ever coming into contact.
Well, what are the winters like there? They're pretty severe, wouldn't you say? I lived in Chicago for 2 months, and I said, I do not like this place. It was from December to February, and it snowed, and then it was ice, and then it was ice and snow, and it never did melt off or anything else. And I thought, oh my goodness, how do people live?
Well, during around this time of year, like I said before we went on the air, Illinois is in southern Illinois. It's basically the state where you can have all 4 seasons in 7 weeks at certain times of the year. I mean, we could have summer one day, fall weather the next day, winter the next day, and then spring weather at the end of the week. And it's like a yo-yo. It goes up and down out here. And up until this last year, was one of the most harsh winters I've ever seen. We had below 0 temperatures. We had as lowest as it got out here was 15 below 0. That's the first time since 2002 that we've had such a rough winter. And, I mean, we've had an abnormally wet spring already this year. Since the start of the year, it's been abnormally wet. We had 8 inches of rain in one night. And then a couple of years ago, we had a heat wave that come through here, and it was above 110 every day for 3 months.
Oh, my gosh.
And, I mean...
That's just... I can't even imagine that because we don't have that down here in the South.
Yeah, well, feel bad for me. I about had 2 heat strokes whenever that mess moved through.
I do. Oh, my goodness. My goodness. Okay, so do you ever go out on expedition? Like go set up camp, or like a base camp, and actually do some night investigation?
Oh, yes. Whenever I get the chance, I do. last time I went camping, it was for my second annual SIMH Bigfoot campout. We do one every year. And I did it in Fern Cliff State Park in Johnson County, the county just south of us, down by Goreville. And I got two research areas there in the park. One's called Happy Hollow, and one's called Round Bluff Nature Preserve. It's all inside the park. And I've found Bigfoot, evidence of Bigfoot and sign all throughout that area. I go to Garden of the Gods in the Shawnee National Forest. I go to Wren Lake. There's a lot of places out here that I like camping, especially out here on my farm, where we own 240 acres. It was in 2016 we had our first camping expedition. I scheduled it. I had the bright idea to do it, and 2 weeks before it actually happened, I scheduled it. And me and my cousin Kyle Nation, I've had him on my show before. I think it was episode 10 or 11. He was on the show, and he talked about an encounter with a Sasquatch that he saw at the very edge of our camp on his night watch. That same night, we was in camp, and it was about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I usually wake up around 4:30, 5 o'clock, startled awake because he was in his tent asleep at the far edge of camp, and I was at the other edge. And I was awoken to something tugging on the side of my tent. And I hollered, I said, "Kyle, quit messing with my tent. It's too early for this crap." Well, usually if I get onto him, my cousin Kyle, he'll giggle if I get onto him. And he's a dead giveaway. If he did anything, he'll sit there and giggle.
No poker face.
There was no giggle. And then all of a sudden, one corner of my tent where I had my feet at started coming up off the ground quite a ways, probably about maybe 6-8 inches off the ground, in a repetitive motion, just like someone was tugging on it. And I'm sitting there in the tent, and it's still dark out. The dog we had with us, I couldn't hear her. She evidently turned tail and ran. And I went and I sitting there, I'm getting bounced around in the tent like a bouncy ball, and I felt my foot hit something solid at that corner of that tent. So I kicked right through the tent, and I kicked one right in the leg through the tent wall. And you talk about hard-bodied, you'd had better chance of getting give out of a cinder block wall kicking this thing.
Oh.
There was no give to you. It basically hurt me about as bad as stubbing my toe on a coffee table in the middle of the night.
Did it make any noise when you kicked it?
Yeah, it grumbled all right. It grumbled, dropped my tent, and you could hear it walking off. And, of course, I had steel-toed boots on, and I kicked it with the steel toe of my boot, and you could hear it grumble whenever I did that, and you could hear it grumbling as it walked off. And then it got to the north edge of camp, and it started breaking everything. And I woke up that next morning, and we're sitting around the fire getting ready to pull camp. And he says, "I seen one at the north edge of camp last night." And I said, "Well, about 4 o'clock this morning, one was screwing around with my tent." And him and me went to go check the north edge of camp. And there was fresh breaks up in the trees where the top of these saplings had been broke off at 10 foot up.
Oh. Huh. Sounded kind of upset that y'all were there.
Pretty much. Then the night before, we was out on a night investigation, and we covered about 3 or 4 miles on foot that night. And we had the dog with us, and we sat down to take a 5-minute break, have a dip of tobacco, smoke a cigar, or what have you. And I was sitting there, we sitting in there in the dark, and I hollered for the dog. I said, "Come here, Sally, come here, baby." Well, then I heard her stop, and I heard a smacking sound like whenever you smack somebody in the face. I heard that, and then I heard that dog yelp, and she come running back limping, and she got up underneath me and Kyle and wouldn't move, and I told him, I said, "Lights on." I pulled my .45 out, And I said, let's head back to camp, and let's head back now. And I stayed at the back of that camp. The group of us that was going out, I stayed at the very back of the pack watching our six.
Mm-hmm. Was the dog okay?
She limped around for a couple hours, but by the next morning she was okay.
Okay, well that's good. So it just kind of popped her to get her away from that area.
Evidently hit her pretty hard because she had a knot on her hip.
Man, that did not want that dog over there.
Well, that's where I draw my theory that Bigfoot just plain don't like dogs. About 2 months ago, I was out doing a call blasting session in the woods, and I had my camera going. I still have yet to upload it because I've been so busy. I was call blasting the sound of a German Shepherd growling and snarling and barking. And as soon as I shut that call blasted off, the whole woods lit up, whooping and hollering, shit breaking and everything.
Wow.
Huh.
Not like that at all. You know, I hear stories about dogs that are chained being attacked, and you know, a dog on a chain can be about the most meanest thing. You know, especially if something is coming up in the yard, and I've heard stories about that. Them getting killed.
I've heard stories of trained police dogs being scared to death by Sasquatch. They will not have nothing to do with them. You've seen them set those trained police dogs that are trained to attack and hang on for dear life till they're called off. Those dogs have changed a tune whenever they're dealing with a Sasquatch.
I imagine so. Well, it's just like the Legend of Boggy Creek. Have you seen that movie? I know everyone has. But you know how they have the hunting dogs.
But I've never been able to get it.
Really?
Well, they have some hunting dogs in this documentary that they had gotten out to go hunt this Sasquatch down, and they hit those dog boxes so hard they like to knock themselves out. They did not want any part of what was out there. And so, don't know too many dogs that will go after a Sasquatch. Most of the time, they want to get away, and it's okay. That would have just. I tell you what, I would have been, Zach. I would have been real mad. I love my dog, and I believe I'd have just turned into a mama bear over that.
Well, just back in January, our blue heeler that we had for 13 years died. And I really don't talk much about it, but his neck was broke.
Oh, my gosh.
And I found him laying there by the door of the pen, and the lock was off the pen. The lock was laying out in the yard, and the door was wide open. His neck was broke. That's striking a nerve right there when you kill my freaking dog. That strikes a vendetta in me.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does, because that's like waging war. You know, I've heard, you know, we've been interviewing people for 10 years now, probably, and, well, maybe 9. And someone had told me at one time, if you like in a habituation type circumstance where they're coming up on your property and close to you and observing you and stuff like that, that if you show affection towards your animals and show them that these animals are part of your family, they will leave them alone. And I've always tried to do that, you know, because I'm concerned about them. But my dogs have run right out there and run just. And when there's one nearby, and I'm just thinking either these dogs are crazy or I just don't understand, but nothing ever happened to them. But when I've also heard of a lot of stories of people having their pets killed, and that would definitely change the playing field. So they're really not your friends, are they? These
Definitely
Sasquatch
not.
in your...
People say they're your forced friend. I call bullshit. These things are not your friend. These things are not your friend. They're like any animal in the woods. If you corner them or you make them mad, they're going to come out swinging, and you may be the one that won't be walking out.
Right.
That's the reason I carry a gun, because a lot of people get mad that I carry a gun when I'm in the woods. And I said, well, one of these things go and strike up on you. You going to sit there and take it? Hell no, you will not. You're going to fight back because it's fight or flight, and you're looking to survive.
But not only that, look at all the other things that are out there.
Look at the guys that happened in Ape Canyon. Look at the guys that happened in Ape Canyon. They were trapped inside a cabin with rifles, and they fought back with these things all night long, pelting rocks on that cabin, trying to get in the cabin. They're shooting back at them with Winchesters and Henrys. That's the reason I say, whatever you do, take a piece out of the book from the TV show Mountain Monsters. Take a gun with you.
It's better be on the safe side.
Better be safe than really sorry.
That's right. You know, if I don't know if you have bear in your area. Are there bear in your area?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So we don't have bear down here either, but we do have wild hogs. We have wild hogs. We do have wolves. Although my encounters with wolves, they've always went the other way. But the wild hogs are something you just don't want to mess with. And these are the javelinos with the
things down.
Yes, exactly. And you better make sure you kill them. Because
those things got hide like armor too.
Yes, they do. You have to hit them in the head, and you generally need to get them right around the ear, because I mean it's just like they are hard
because they got such a hard skull, it'll ricochet.
That's right. That's right. And they are just vicious when they're wounded. So
I talked to a hunter out of West Texas, and he told me that he was hunting with a 50 caliber rifle like Chris Kyle used, and he shot a hog 6 times with that thing, and that sucker still would not go down.
Nope.
Yeah,
we've had some pretty big hogs in our yard. Yeah, we have, and some of them we've just heard them, and they're monsters. They're hogzillas. They're huge. They're as tall as a calf. You know, a pretty good sized calf, and they range anywhere. These large ones anywhere from 300 to 400 pounds. And
they got that Eurasian boar and that doo-rock in them.
And it's just, you know, you don't see them very often, but people will kill them and put them up. You know, they'll put their pictures up on Facebook, and I'm going, my goodness, that's running around out there where I'm running around.
Oh, I got a friend of mine that I went to college with that he has a farm in Alabama, and he sent me a picture back in the early part of 2016, and there was a hog out there that was about as long as the front end of a Jeep Liberty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nope.
Yeah.
I don't want it.
You'd be a daggone truck or a bazooka to knock them things down.
That's true. That's true. And that's another thing, too. You know, they'll run out in front of your car, and that's it. You have a total vehicle. And if
you might be hitting a brick wall.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they ain't going to go through your windshield. They're going to go right up underneath your truck and screw up your suspension and your frame and everything.
Yes. Well, it just depends on how big they are. They have been known to go right across the hood, right into the windshield.
That's a big hog, then, if he does that.
Yep. These are some big hogs. Now, I'm not saying that we have... I've seen that many big ones, but we've got them down here. I've seen their tracks. I just tell you what. But anyway, back to our favorite subject of Sasquatch. Have you had any issues with them coming up around your house?
Yes, ma'am.
You know they killed your dog. So that had to have been pretty close to the house then. But have you had any incidences of them coming up and banging on your house or looking through your windows? Or
my brother back in 2012, he was up on his stool doing the dishes that night, and above our sink we have a window in our double wide. And he looked up and he said he saw a big one looking right in the window at him. And I went out the next day and I measured that window. And the top of that window where he said where its eyes was at the very top of the window was 8 feet off the ground.
Wow.
And we've had them where they've come up and knock on our house. We've had them come up and tear siding off of our house, strips of our siding, and it's plastic siding, vinyl. We've had them come up and to the point where we've double locked our doors, put about 2 or 3 deadbolts on the door, where they've come up and jiggled the doorknob and growled at the door and everything.
Oh my goodness.
There's been stories up out here where they've been breaking into people's deep freezes out in their barns, making off with their pets. Just this last year, my neighbor lost both his dogs and 2 hogs within a matter of a month, and he lives about maybe 100 yards from right where I'm sitting right now in my truck.
Have you ever heard the story about the Hanobi incident?
Faintly, I've heard bits and pieces about them. I heard they were fighting with them because of the deer population.
Mm. There were similar stories. Their freezers were being broken into. Their pets were being killed. They were being terrorized. The family was being terrorized. What seems strange to me, though, in your instance, is that you are 5th generation cattle farmer. Your family has been on this farm for how many generations? 5?
5, since 1840.
Right. So it's not like you moved into their territory.
No.
So how about any relatives? Have they ever said anything?
My mom, my brother, my great-grandmother, my grandfather, my grandma thinks it's a bunch of bull.
Really?
She's one of these people, I mean, I love my grandmother to death, but she's one of these people that want to go and think they got everything in life figured out, and don't want nothing to ruin their little way of life that they think they got figured out.
Right.
But my mom, in just recent years, back in August of last year, she was driving home from her job at Dillard's with Estee Lauder about 10 o'clock at night, and she seen one walk in front of her Jeep.
My gosh.
All she saw, and it was on the other side of a little rise in the road, and she saw the head and shoulders of it, and it was shining red eyes. My brother has seen him looking. My brother has seen him looking in the window at him. He's seen him while he was out riding his bicycle up and down these roads. My great-grandmother, Opal, back in 1993, she shot through the screen door at one with a .38.
And was it up on the porch at the door?
It was out in the front yard. She thought it was a peeping Tom, and so she shot right through the screen door at it.
Uh-huh.
And my grandpa I'm pretty sure that my granddad has seen him by as much interest as he shows in this thing, but he just won't say nothing because he's such a respected member in our community as being a cattleman and being a businessman. He doesn't want people to think he's insane.
Absolutely, I understand
but,
that.
I mean, there's people out here. There's Amish over in the next county. I live right on the county line, about 3 miles away from here. They've watched one time pull down their 1,500-pound stud bull, Black Angus. They've watched one pull down a 1,500-pound stud bull. I've found a nest about 7 miles from here over on Harco Blacktop, over by where Brushy Creek Mine is, back in 2016, in February of 2016. I found tree structures, I found footprints, I found hair samples, I found kills. I've seen these things when they're hunting. I've been up so close to one, I've actually been able to tell what sex he is.
Oh, my goodness.
And it was a male with 2 females, and I think I walked in on them in the bedroom.
Oh,
no kidding.
Well, he was having a good
I'm
night.
not kidding. I'm not kidding.
My.
I've walked in on them. I've been, quote-unquote, pinned down by them where they've had the high ground on me on both sides of this ravine that's out behind my barn, where they were howling back and forth at each other. And every time one had howled, the other one would sound closer, then the other one sound closer. I pulled my .45 out, and I've shot in the air, and then they pretty much scattered, and I turned tail and ran.
Yeah.
These things are in southern Illinois. They are here. We're on their land, not the other way around. They're the apex predator.
Gosh. So do you think anything has changed in the last 150 years that your family has been on that property? In other words, are they losing their habitat?
Oh, most definitely. Out here in the little ravine that I was just talking about, where I was pinned down by I believed I was getting ready to be ambushed. Back when my granddad was 5 or 6 years old, back in 1945, 1946, that was all trees. And his dad told him he had 30 days to clear out this one hillside, and all he had was an axe and a crosscut saw. And he cleared out one hillside in 30 days and the other side in 20 days. That was all trees back in there. There's been a guy that moved in here about 20 years ago. That's a psychologist that's retired. He lives in the middle of 100 acres, and he had 90% of it bulldozed so he could put his little mansion out there. There has been coal mines that's come in here in the last 40 years, Amax Coal and Brushy Creek Coal Mine. There's been Freeman Coal Mine Company that's come through here and put 2 or 3 mines out here, and they've strip mined it and they gutted this land. Then they've took a lot of places out, and there's a lot of it that's been turned into swampland. There's so much out here since the 1840s that's changed, and there's been so many new roads put out here. Out here where I live, we didn't even have indoor plumbing till I was 5 years old. This road I lived on wasn't paved. It was a dirt road till I was about 5 years old.
Do you think that has something to do with the aggressive nature? Because
so much changing and everything, yes.
Yes, because I have to wonder, because there are pockets of aggressive Sasquatch all over the United States. And I always wonder, I've always tried to figure out, why are they so aggressive, so territorial, and why they are in some places, and in other places they're completely opposite. They'll just go on their way. They don't want to have anything to do with you. They're not going to expose themselves or do anything that's going to get themselves in trouble or shot at or anything else. But then there are other areas that they don't care. They're being extremely bold, aggressive, and territorial. So what is your theory on that? Why is that you are experiencing that kind of activity in your area? Do you think it is the habitat?
I believe so. They're getting the squeeze put on them, and they're starting to fight back.
I see. I think you're right.
Because, like, with any kind of animal, they know how to. Any kind of animal, I believe, knows how to organize. If they're getting the squeeze put on, they will fight back. It's the fight or flight instinct in them.
Well, we have about 11 minutes left. Is there anything that you want to share with us, absolutely, before the show is over?
Well, I've got a couple of announcements for you.
Okay.
June 29th through July 1st in Fishersville, Virginia, I will be emceeing for the East Coast Bigfoot Researchers Organization's Virginia State Bigfoot Conference that's hosted by Daniel Benoit himself. I invite everybody to come out. It's $20 a ticket. That's dirt cheap. And we're going to be having people like the likes of Ron J. Moorhead, who recorded the Sierra Sounds, Mike Miller and Mike Feltner of the Ohio Night Stalkers, Bill Lancaster from Bilko Productions will be there, Ed Brown and Dan Lindholm from Big Truth Productions, Baltimore Gavon Jr., Tracy Arnold, the She-Squatchers out of Wisconsin, Minnesota area. We'll be having Darby Orcutt from North Carolina State University, Ernest Soler, the author of Spirit of Sasquatch. He will be from West Virginia. He will be there. It's going to be a very big thing. Sergeant Sasquatch will be there. Dr. Kimberly McGeorge from Secret to Everything will be there. I invite everybody to come out. I want to meet everybody. I love talking to new folks. Just come on out and have yourself a very good time. Going on here, and then after that, it's followed by a week-long camping expedition of primitive camping in the George Washington State Forest, which is Daniel Benoit and Fred Caney's research area. It's free to go. You guys are more than welcome to show up. July 27th, here in my home state, in my hometown of Crab Orchard, Illinois, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., I will be doing a Bigfoot seminar. It's free to the public. If you have a sighting, feel free to share it there. We're going to be having a meet and greet, a seminar, a Q&A after the seminar. Everybody is more than welcome to come on out. Like I said, it's free to the public. I'll have T-shirts there, car decals, business cards, pictures to give out and autograph. I'll take pictures with everybody. Like I said, I love meeting everybody. And then October 19th through the 21st, I will be in Kingsport, Tennessee, at Bays Mountain Park and Observatory at the Farmstead Museum, the Tennessee Bigfoot Conference hosted by John Stamey. I will be there again with the She-Squatchers, Matt Delph from Mountain Empire Cryptid Researchers Organization, Dr. John Stamey, Papa Stro Maestro, and Boogie Woogie Man Valiant from the old WCW wrestling brand. They will be there. We have a Comic-Con on the 21st. You guys are more than welcome to come to that. Go on Google and type in Tennessee Bigfoot Conference and pull up the Tennessee Bigfoot Day celebration. You can get your tickets there. They have to be pre-ordered. They won't be sold at the door. So get on that. You guys got plenty of time. I hope to see you guys there. Let's see. Follow me and my team from the Southern Illinois Monster Hunters on Facebook. Just type in the name Southern Illinois Monster Hunters. We are there. We love talking to new people. We post just about daily on our Facebook page. Be sure to check out my team, Cryptid CSI, the Cryptid Crime Scene Investigators. There's members on the team, and Stacy Coughlin, Tracy Arnold, Fred Caney, Daniel Benoit, Baltimore Gavon Jr., Rich Daniels. We're all over the country, and we're investigating any and all cryptids that and any kind of bizarre and unusual attacks or kills that has happened on people or livestock. We investigate that kind of stuff. And if you have a case that you think we may be interested in, send it to us. We're on Facebook, Cryptid CSI. Our logo is a skull and crossbones with our name on it.
Right.
Also, if you want to reach me personally, if you want to email me, get to know a little bit about what we've got in our merchandise box, or if you have an encounter you just want to send in or actually stop in and say hi, you can email me at Blimp, SIMH, BLIMPSIMH @gmail.com. I usually just drop me a line. I'd be glad to hear from you. If you have an encounter and you drop it in my inbox on my email, you may just end up on Backwoods Investigations. No reports are turned away. I love all kinds of reports, whether it be Bigfoot, Dogman, Mothman, or Paranormal, or UFOs. Look me up on YouTube. Just type in my name, Zach Starrick, ZACHSTARRICK on YouTube. And all the shows I've done, Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio, of course, Night Callers, Bigfoot Talk Radio, Shaky's Porch Talk, etc. All the shows I've done will pop up there.
Okay.
And also be sure to check out the Southern Illinois Monster Hunters Team YouTube channel, and be sure to tune in for my daily, I'm getting tongue twisted here. For my updated content, for whether it be from Backwoods Investigations with Blimp, whether it be Story Time with Blimp, where I talk about all kinds of cryptids and paranormal phenomenon from all over. Be sure to check out whenever I upload my findings from my field research, and check in with updates from Blimp from time to time. I usually do one about once every 3 months. So be sure to subscribe, share us with your friends, click the like button, drop a comment, leave us a message. We love hearing from you folks. And you guys are the reason that I keep doing this, because I'm out there to prove that Bigfoot exists in this world, and contrary to popular belief, these things are out there. I'm just looking out here to go where the scientists won't go.
Amen. Very well said. You've been an awesome guest, Zach. You know, you're as good a guest as you are an interviewer and radio host. You're awesome.
Well, I
really
greatly appreciate that.
On.
Oh, I got more stories. Call me back, and I'll come back on anytime you want me.
I know you do. Because I think you just you ran through them pretty quickly, and I know there was a lot of detail that you weren't able to share with us, and I really would like to get you on and again and hear those stories. Wow, you have really seen a lot in the short time that you've really been in this, I guess. Wow, very impressed. Want to thank you for coming on. Thank you very much for coming on. And,
well, ladies, I had a very great time. I enjoy you guys reaching out to me.
And I'm glad we did. Sure glad we did. And we'll have you back very soon. And the conference, I found the link to the ECBRO conference, and I've got it put up over on our Night Callers page. So all the information is there.
Oh, and, also, before I forget,
yes.
August 31st through September 3rd, Labor Day weekend of this year, is my 3rd annual Bigfoot campout right here in Southern Illinois on my farm. Everybody is welcome to come. It's free. All you got to do is bring your own food, bring your gear, bring your tent, bring yourself. It's free to come out.
See, that's awesome. I know a particular group out there was charging $300 a head.
I don't charge jack. You guys come out here. If anyone's out there charging for you to go squatching with them, something's fishy.
I agree.
And I don't care what anybody has to say. They can kiss my foot on that one. I stick by what I say.
Well, you've been a treasure. You have been a true treasure to have on the show. We are so thankful you came on. And keep up what you're doing. Give them heck.
Oh,
Sounds
I'm
like,
going to keep going until they throw dirt in my face. I ain't letting up. The journey's just begun.
Well, I don't know. You've had quite a journey already. Really. You've had more stuff happen to you than a lot of people that are out there trying every day. I think you're in a very unique situation.
Like I tell everybody, there's only a few of them out there chosen by the Almighty that actually get to experience these things.
That's true. That's true. Well, anyway, we're going to have to call it a show, say good night, and everyone have a blessed one out there. Thank you so much for listening to Night Callers Radio. Next week it's Easter, so we won't be having a show next Sunday night, but we'll be back the Sunday after that with a great guest. So we'll see everyone then. Have a happy Easter. Everyone say goodbye and good night. And
good night, folks. Keep a wary eye out. Keep your ears in the wind and your nose on the ground.
Good night, all.
Thank you for listening to Night Callers Bigfoot Radio.